This is
Up
for Grabs, a podcast where three unfiltered friends talk about anything and everything. And now, here are your hosts, Tracy, Kim, and Rachel.
Welcome to Up for Grabs. I'm Rachel. I'm here with my crime-fighting friends, Kim.
Hello.
And Tracy.
Hello.
I say crime-fighting because today on Up for Grabs, if you're listening just on the regular podcast, that's wonderful. Welcome. If you're watching us on YouTube, it's Up for Grabs podcast on YouTube. I don't know why you'd be doing that, but thank you for joining us. But today, I said my crime-fighting friends, we're going true crime today. Kim is a aficionado of true crime.
Yeah, I would consider myself a true crime junkie.
And Tracy just likes to commit crimes. So,
okay, that's inappropriate and wrong. And I feel like I'm going to have people looking at me now.
You told me stories from your youth that I know.
Oh, yeah, those were crimes, but those were statute of limitations is right up.
Crime/pranks.
If stealing's a prank, then okay.
Well, I was thinking about...
Okay, stealing, borrowing without returning. Thank you.
In a future podcast, we're going to have to share her stories of how they tormented a priest. But that's I'm just going to leave it at that.
This is not that's not one of the true crime. That's not one of the true crime things. Not yet. So today we're going to be discussing true crime. Now, I admittedly don't follow true crime unless you include watching Dateline every Friday night at 10.
I mean, that's in the true crime genre.
It was kind of the beginning.
I was going to talk about that a little bit. Stone Phillips, hello. Do you remember?
I forgot before the white-haired creepy guy?
How dare you?
How dare you?
Oh, suddenly he's not creepy.
It
was murder. Who was that? Who's that guy?
Keith Morrison?
Keith Morrison, yeah.
Well, you were really too quick with
That's what I do every Friday.
Fun fact, Keith
Do you watch
Morrison.
For the past 10 years. It's that and 2020. And when they both have a new episode on.
Oh, I DVR
one of them. It is golden. That is
But Dateline has a real following with their people, like at Crime Con, which that's on my bucket list.
Oh, time out. There's a Crime Con?
Oh,
Let's go.
There is a Crime Con. And they, like, Keith Morrison, all those people go. And, I mean, he does voicemails for people. Because his voice is so Cameo. Crazy. He's on Cameo, and he will do a voicemail for you for your phone. I mean, I don't know. Stone Phillips was one of my all-time favorites as far as he was the catalyst for my true crime obsession.
Which one did To Catch a Predator?
Chris.
Hansen. Hansen?
Yeah, Chris Hansen.
He does cameos too.
Ooh.
Hilarious.
Yeah, Chris Hansen. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't watch I'm not taping if it's a double, but I oftentimes there's nothing else on a Friday and I don't go anywhere. So oftentimes I will be watching it, taking copious notes on how to off my husband without ever being.
That's what my husband always says.
Found out.
My husband said that he probably needs a crime folder.
Yeah.
Like of where, who did it, whatever, because I probably have perfected a way to murder and not get caught.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, I think it's very helpful. And every time he walks in when I'm watching it, he gets a little nervous.
Yeah.
He's like, are you finding
it?
As he
should be, because it's really a step-by-step guide.
It is.
It truly is.
Lucky for him.
They were the perfect couple, or so
were
everyone
they?
thought.
Yeah.
Like every time.
Was it murder?
Yeah, so that's my true crime kind of starts at Dateline and ends at is it the Tiger King?
Oh, yeah.
Lion King, what's his name?
Tiger King. I don't know if that, who killed Carol Baskin's husband? I mean,
she did.
But that would be a true crime. Yeah.
But no, he did commit a crime though, didn't he?
Yeah, he did commit a crime.
Again, those were little ones, weren't they?
I don't know. I think
landed
he
him
put
in
a hit
jail.
out on Carol, and he was, all kinds of crazy things. But true crime has evolved over the years because of social media and podcasts. Podcasts are a huge promoter of, if you Googled true crime podcast, literally hundreds.
Yeah.
Hundreds of them.
Hundreds?
Which, I mean, you can look at it as, that's really creepy, but I think people are fascinated and most true crime podcasts are unsolved cold case
Okay.
Right.
cases. And there have been famous ones that have caught I mean, because of a certain podcast, they have caught people or they get tips and it leads to the solution of the case. And then there's podcasts that do true crime more as a historical. That's kind of what we're going to focus on today. Maybe something that was solved, but it's just happened so long ago and there's a history behind it. And people just are kind of fascinated in digging into the specifics of the story.
Which kind do you like better? The ones that are solved or unsolved?
I love the cold case ones.
Okay.
Which
Yeah.
kind of, yeah.
It's like a puzzle, and you want to be able to finish it, to complete the puzzle.
Yes.
So you're like putting together the pieces that other people have collected, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I found the missing piece. I finished the puzzle.
So maybe an assignment we could have after this podcast is to solve an unsolved mystery.
Like in the next week, or like
Well,
someone.
I'm not going to put a timetable.
Okay.
It might have taken some people 20 years, but
I was going to get involved in my spare time with a local case recently.
No,
Last summer, before everything COVID,
yeah.
I was finding
packing
spots
your
that I
bag?
was going to go. It's only like an hour from here that I was going to go sit and just watch the people and as an unconnected observer and see if I could put the missing girls. So
Yeah, the Delphi murders.
yeah, I really wanted to be a part of that. And
they
like,
still haven't solved that, have they?
no, I wanted to go sit in a diner like they do in all the TV shows, and then like
I know it.
overhear something, and no one notices the fat mom in the corner that isn't from town.
The
All of
outsider.
a sudden, I solve it. All right, I'm sorry.
No,
Kim
you're
probably
fine.
has a whole
So
schedule, and we're
I
ruining
have
it.
3 podcasts that if anybody is interested that's listening that are very worthy of a listen. The first one is called Crime Junkies, and that's a fun one because the 2 ladies that host that podcast are from Indianapolis. And Crime Junkies is probably one of the most popular podcasts. I looked on it. It gets 22 million views each month.
Wow.
We get excited with 100 downloads.
It is pretty exciting.
But Ashley Flowers is the main host, and then her best friend Britt is her sidekick. And they basically have developed where they do about a 45-minute podcast every Monday, and they will talk about a case.
Okay.
And most of the time they're cold cases, and they'll just give a rundown of the case. They investigate the background of the case, but they're not out there being the personal investigators.
Right.
And it has grown. She now has her own company. And so there's like 7 or 8 different podcasts that have sprouted from that. And she's got different investigative journalists. It's definitely worth your listen. My second favorite one, and it's a weekly podcast, is called The Murder Squad. 2 men on that are Paul Holes, which he's one of my favorite people. He's a very good looking man, and he's got a cool voice, but he is a retired forensic cold case. So he knows his stuff. And then Billy Jensen, his sidekick, is just a journalist. And they go over cold cases as well. And they kind of reopen the ideas. And Paul will talk about the forensic side of it, and Billy will talk about the journalistic side of it. Paul Holes is famous for being one of the detectives that helped solve the Golden State Killer. So
Okay.
he worked with the DNA and worked with the forensic. And so that's kind of his claim to fame. And then the last one, it's called Up and Vanished. And
I've not heard of that.
The guy that runs this, his name is Payne Lindsay. And he's an Atlanta-based filmmaker, but this one is so good. The new season just dropped yesterday. He goes out in the field and investigates these. And he puts himself in situations. So this newest one is like an Indian reservation in Montana, and the killing of, you would not believe how many women are murdered. Indian women are murdered. And I know I'm not saying the right
Native American.
Yes, I'm sorry, but Native American. But he's investigating this, and he's putting himself. It's crazy. So it's called Up and Vanished.
Up and Vanished.
And it'll be like maybe 10 to 12 episodes that are weekly, and I'm literally like just waiting for the next one. Like, what's he finding out? And they're long cold cases that many years ago, and he's trying to figure those out. So
Interesting. Okay.
those are my top 3. And then before we get into the case, I just wanted to, I know some people would rather watch something, and I'm telling you, if you Google true crime documentaries, you are going to find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. HBO has the best ones. They have the ones that are done the best. So there's a case called The Staircase, and it's about a man's wife that fell down the stairs and was and died. So
I've seen it.
It's been very,
Yeah,
I mean,
you
it's
said
been
it,
on
yeah.
Dateline. It's been on everything. And it's a very, very odd case. And it went on for years and years and years. It is a great.
He has gray hair. She was full blood. Yep.
It is a great documentary, and I'm not going to say too much else about it.
did it?
But
Him? Who do you think did it?
the documentary was done so well.
Yeah.
And then I stumbled upon one over quarantine last year called Murder on Middle Beach.
Saw it.
And it was a son that his mother was killed.
Yeah.
And he truly believes that it's his dad. Never been convicted. He doesn't. It is the oddest.
I'm sure Christmases are awkward at their house.
Well, and I feel like we're the first generation to have this phenomenon. And
Yes.
I'm sorry.
that's
but,
all right.
Of the true crime or the investigative part of people being involved because of the internet, because of cameras everywhere. Like before somebody got killed, they got dumped in a alley, a couple generations back, or in a ditch somewhere. Well, guess we're never going to find out who killed Bob. Like he was just dead. But now they can go back and they can see, well, there was a
Yes.
truck here 4 miles down the road 30 minutes earlier, like
That's one of the notes I made in my
crazy.
in my notebook for Dateline was it was a hell of a lot easier to get away with murder back in the 70s than it is now. So
I have to put a
I
lot
missed-
more work into it now.
My window of killing really it's
the
closed.
advancement
It's
of
closed.
DNA. I'm not familial DNA, which
Yeah.
basically that's how they caught the Golden State Killer. They found it from like DNA from like cousins, and I mean they go
wow.
back far,
Yes.
and it takes a very long time to work through it all. But it's fascinating to watch something on that and understand how they do it. It is, and that's why I'm telling you, cold cases out there with DNA, and different
screwed.
states pass laws that inmates have to have their DNA sampled the minute that they're put in jail. They're going to catch people.
Absolutely. I think both Ancestry.com and 23andMe have a spot on the form that do submit this for familial, correctional DNA submission. And then all of a sudden they are like, oh, we have a match with Tracy in Indiana on this murder. It's somewhere along the line. So then they're like, do you know any of these 10 people or whatever? And I'm like, yeah, that's my cousin Joe Bob. And they're like,
He did it.
Joe Bob did it. Yeah.
I
don't
think
have a
that would
cousin
be
Joe
in a
Bob.
former life, or maybe I would have loved, or not former, but if I could go back in time, and if I think that if I had the scientific brain, that would be the most fascinating job.
Forensics? Would you have
Yes.
been like
Okay, can I
Absolutely.
again? I got to interject one more time. I can't help myself, but I was married to someone in law enforcement, or with someone for 25 years, so I, have a little bit, not hardly any inside knowledge, but some, of just how things work. And there are a lot of kids now going to school to be a forensic scientist or whatever, and they think it's going to be like on TV shows.
Yeah, and it's not.
And unfortunately, it's not that one person that shows up at the crime scene and gets under the fingernails, and then they take it back to the lab and they do the science on it, and then they process the body 2 hours later, and then they're doing all the jobs of 10 people.
I know.
And unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of disillusioned kids getting out of college in the next few years that find out they really just sit in a lab all day long, or they just go out.
this dead people thing isn't as fun as they
it is
thought it was
not
going to
near
be.
as fun as they're thinking. Not that it's not a worthy job, it really is.
No.
But
No, but you never know.
It's
You
not
may-
instant gratification. It's not
Right.
within an hour you're going to know.
yes,
What
who
if
did
you
it.
solved the Zodiac killer? That's still open and out there. So,
yeah.
anyways, listen to me dropping my knowledge.
Well, then that's the one we're going to
Knowledge
solve.
dropper.
So,
Yes. What's our
so
case?
Let's get on the case that I looked into. So we're from Indiana. Those listening outside of our area,
Whoever our France person is
Yes,
that listens,
whoever listens in
within the
France.
first couple of hours. I always like that.
So I Googled, infamous, famous Indiana, crimes, murders. And one that came up and kept coming up that I had never heard of, believe it or not, because I hadn't listened to a podcast about it, probably because it's been solved. And so I'm not listening to something that's still a cold case, is the 1965 torture and murder of Sylvia Likens.
Now, I recognize the name, and I remember it was it was a big deal here in Indiana, but I don't remember all of the...
Right. And it was in Indianapolis. So it was really local to us. And Tracy, your fun fact?
My fun fact, you know how I like to name drop. This is for Joe Schaefer. But this isn't really a name drop. But my parents grew up early years on West New York Street, and this occurred on West New York Street. So
the house no longer exists. Right. So if anybody's looking at this and thinking, oh, that, you know, they tore it down in the early 2000s. So let me just give my brief synopsis of what the whole crime was. So Sylvia Likens is a 16-year-old girl. That's who we're talking about. And she was murdered in the summer of 1965. So just a little background on Sylvia. Her parents, Lester and Betty, had 5 kids. And this is really interesting. Sylvia is the middle child between 2 sets of fraternal twins, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
So Lester and Betty were, you know, uneducated. I think they said Lester maybe had like an 8th grade education. They were hardworking individuals trying to make ends meet. Kind of, you know, it was rough. And Lester came upon a gig to travel with a carnival and to be like in concession stand sales.
Oh my God.
So
in the 60s, what could go wrong?
In the 60s, what could go wrong? Okay. So Lester decided that would be a good idea, and it wouldn't be that long. It would just be a summer. Betty, they had a tumultuous relationship, in and out, you know, separated, this and that, and Betty agreed. So they needed to find care for their children. Well, the 2 oldest children were married, so they didn't have to worry about them. And then the 2 youngest lived with grandparents.
Okay.
Or one of the youngest lived with the grandparents. So Sylvia, being 16, and her sister Jenny, who was 15. And Jenny, this is a little bit of a backstory, but she suffered from polio. Okay. So she was weak and kind of frail, and just had health issues and stuff like that. They needed care. So Lester and Betty, on the advice of a friend, were told, you know, there's this lady that lives, you know, across town, and she does babysitting, and she's looking for, you know, children, and she would be a great opportunity. So this lady's name was Gertrude Baniszewski. So this was the infamous babysitter. So Lester, and this is where the story gets a little bit weird, went ahead and agreed, talked with Gertrude a couple times, never met her personally, and never went into her house. I just think, not that times have changed, but I just think they were desperate, and they trusted their friend, and hey, Gertrude's going to take care of our kids for summer. The payment was like $20 a week, which nowadays it would average out to be like $150 a week. So that's where Sylvia and Jenny went. That's where they went in the summer of 65.
Well, to interject, I feel like I've left my kids with unchecked people. I mean, at least I met them and I looked in their house, but that doesn't mean I know what goes on.
Yes and no. I mean, you do some surveillance, don't you? I mean,
this is spending the night. This is like living there.
Yeah. Oh, living there. I thought it was like
there.
Day to day.
Living there for.
I check references. Come on, and I put a couple things together while you were talking. Not that it's an unsolved mystery that I've solved.
Wouldn't it be funny if she said she knew who did it and it wasn't the person?
I feel like I know a lot about this case, and Rachel said she'd never heard it, and I'm like, well, that's just weird to me because we both grew up in this city, and so neither did you. But a couple things. So I did grow up on the West Side. She was killed in 65. I would have been 16 in 85. So I'm sure it was on the news, like the 20th anniversary.
Yeah, yes.
That's where I heard of it. Yeah.
And so, you know, I would have been her age, and I must have really like been frightened or identified or something where, like, I talk about it like I know them. I don't know them. People, I don't know these people.
No, but
like when you say the case, I'm like, oh yes, well aware. Like I know the details of the blood type, and obviously I don't know any of that, but I feel like I do, and I think it's that.
It was a cautionary tale from when you were growing up.
Yes, that can happen to somebody that age, like somebody that's 16 can be murdered. Yeah, and it probably, that kind of stuff just stays with you.
Yeah. So
anyways, so Gertrude. The infamous babysitter. So Gertrude was a hot mess. She was a pill popper. She had various health issues. She'd been married a couple times, but she had 7 kids that ranged in age from 17 to 18 months. So And that's why I feel like, Lester would have only known, but that's beside the point. So
no, we're not letting Lester off the hook.
He was at the carnival, you guys.
Bullshit.
I'll come back to Lester
because I'm not okay with this.
That's what kind of the parents stuck with me almost the whole time I was researching this. But I'll come back to that.
He was busy at the carnival, Tracy.
Okay,
we have time.
So, Gertrude, 7 kids. She was single, so she needed the money and all that, addicted to pills. They put her as like a skinny woman who had suffered from asthma, whatever. So what started the abuse? Like what, I was like, okay, what happened? Well, from the get-go, when Sylvia and Jenny moved in, Jenny did not get along with Gertrude's oldest daughter, who was 17. Her name was Paula. Paula plays a big role in this. And so she was just mean, bullied, all this stuff. Lester wasn't good about getting payment on time. And and Gertrude took it out on the children. Jenny really didn't get the abuse. The way the story goes is that Sylvia just kind of took the brunt of it. So it just started out as, hitting, getting locked in her room for a period of time, and then it just escalated.
Okay, I have a question. Maybe you already said this. What's the mom doing? I mean, you were blaming Lester, but what's her mom?
The mom went along with Lester with the carnival.
But was the mom working? Like, why couldn't she take care of her 16 and 15-year-old daughters? What was the mom doing?
She was in the carnival circuit with
She was in the carnival too.
No, I mean, yeah, they both.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Together.
She was the fat bearded lady.
Yeah. And I researched her a little bit too, Sylvia's mom, and she had been arrested a couple times for shoplifting, and she just kind of was. There was some sketchiness to.
Well, I just missed that part, like
dynamic
that they decided
Betty went as
they
well.
Both up and joined the carnival.
I don't understand it, but on a side note, my grandma, when she was younger, went to Jasper, Indiana every summer to live with her aunt and to do work and chores. And I mean, I know that it's not the exact same thing, but their parents you're gone the entire summer at 12 years old.
Right.
So I think the idea of we've got to keep a roof over our heads for these kids, this opportunity, we're going to have to just trust it. I right or wrong, I guess because I've never been in that desperate of a situation, literally they needed money. I don't know. It gets crazier.
Okay, keep going.
It gets crazier. So the abuse, this was 4 months. It was July to October.
Okay.
This happened just in a 4-month period. The abuse escalated crazy. I mean, Gertrude was nuts. She had her kids in on the abuse. So Paula and 2 of her sons, they were terrible to Sylvia. They had neighborhood kids in on the abuse. This sounds unbelievable, but if you read the story, it is crazy.
She was tortured.
She
regularly
was tortured. She was burned. She was beaten. She was malnourished. They carved things in her skin that she was a prostitute. It was awful. It was awful. It was like a house of horrors. It really was. And, Jenny kind of was threatened. She was on the sidelines. She didn't have a voice. So when I was researching this, I was like, nobody noticed anything. This is the summer. So most of the summer wasn't school. So there was no worries about that. Jenny did reach out to her older sister at one point. Diana was her name, and told her what was going on. And Diana called CPS, and CPS made a house visit to Gertrude's house and did not come in, talk to Gertrude.
Hey, are you abusing the kids? No, they're good.
Gertrude
okay, bye.
Forced Jenny to state that Sylvia had ran away and that nothing was going on. So the
nothing to see here, folks.
One opportunity, and you always hear that CPS is called. They go, "Oh, everything's fine," and boom.
Yeah. Well, here's my question then. If you said that they had 2 older siblings that were married, why didn't they go live with them?
I have no idea. There isn't reasoning on it.
And maybe, it wasn't convenient for them or whatever, but if your sister called you and said, hey, you might want to call CPS, we're being abused, would you say, come live with me? Am I being too functional? Is this
Yes,
this
you're
family
being
is too
entirely
dysfunctional.
And Diana, the older sister, really, in the interviews that they did with her after everything, said that she really kind of thought that the girls were just kind of over exaggerating the story because they didn't really want to be there. And then when she heard that Jenny said nothing was really going on and that Sylvia had, ran away and it was nothing and, she came back and all that stuff, it was just one of those almost like out of sight, out of mind.
Okay.
I don't want to, everything's fine. I don't want to have to
deal with this.
So it escalated to the point where Sylvia was basically locked in a cellar and basically starving. And Gertrude knew she was dying.
Yeah.
So Gertrude came up with a plan that she was going to have Sylvia write a note that said a group of neighborhood boys came over and raped her. And they carved into her stomach, "I'm a prostitute." So she died. Gertrude freaked out, called the police, brought them down into the basement. I didn't look up crime photos because I did not want to see it, but over 100 different type of mutilations on her body.
Oh my God.
She showed the note to the police officers, and the police officers were suspicious from the get-go. But Jenny whispered to a police officer that day, "You need to get me out of here. I will tell you everything." And that's what instigated the investigation.
They weren't going to investigate until she whispered that?
Well, I don't know, but thank goodness that Jenny spoke up. I mean, I'm sure that they probably would have been again. I don't know, 1960. I don't know. I mean,
Like, it's easy to say it was a different time. But like, it was a different time a few years before I was born. It's not like it was 100 years ago,
but you hear
or
even
1,000 years ago. It was, give or
Well,
take my lifetime.
You hear stories today, and Dr. Phil did an episode, and I don't know the whole. Remember the House of Horrors where the two girls were there for like 10 years?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So that
And they broke out a window or
it
something and got
happens.
out.
I mean, it's scary, but Sylvia, so the coroner, it was hemorrhaging, it was malnutrition, it was awful, awful, awful. So that's what prompted the investigation. So the trial was in 1966, May of 1966. And here were the charges. Gertrude was charged with first-degree murder.
Good.
Paula was charged with second-degree murder.
Okay.
One of the sons and a neighborhood boy were charged with manslaughter. They were like under the age of 17. So,
Ew. To be that mean, that young?
I know. Can you, I don't even understand how she had them under her spell that one of her kids would not have. I mean, obviously they were terrified of her. They probably thought if it's not Sylvia, it's going to be me.
Yeah.
So at the trial, Dad did testify. Jenny testified, and some of the younger neighborhood children testified. Betty, Sylvia's mom, couldn't even be in the court proceedings because she was so traumatized by it. Dad felt horrible guilt. In Jenny and even the other children, Sylvia's siblings said, "My mom and dad were good parents. They loved us. They were working hard. They were in over their head. Things were overlooked. It was just a tragedy. It was awful." So they were convicted. Gertrude was convicted and she was sentenced to life without parole. Paula was convicted to life, and then the two boys up to 2 years because they were underage. But oh no, it gets crazier.
What?
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more.
How
In
could it get crazy?
1971, they were granted another trial because of prejudicial atmosphere. My husband's an attorney, and I was like, well, what is prejudicial atmosphere? And basically, it's that during the time of that trial that the whole town knew about it. And that
Kind of like how they request a separate,
people were influenced.
different location for your
People
trial.
were biased and all this stuff. So I'll be darned, there was a new trial. So Paula went ahead and just took a plea. Paula was the oldest daughter, and she pled to manslaughter, and she was supposed to serve up to 21 years in prison, and she got out in 2. Gertrude was guilty again, and they sentenced her to life, this time without parole.
Okay.
And then the 2 boys were basically just stayed in juvenile. They ended up serving 18 months. In 1985, Gertrude was up for parole, and the whole town went crazy. writing letters, blah, blah, blah. She got out.
Wait a minute, writing letters in her favor?
Yeah, no, not in her favor. Writing letters, like petitions.
Okay, 85. We were 16.
There you go.
So
That's
totally
why it was
makes
back
sense.
in-
Yeah.
okay.
She got out of jail?
She got out of jail. So basically from the time that she was arrested to 1985, she served 19 years. That's
Not enough.
it.
Not enough.
That is it. But it doesn't end up being so. She got out of jail. She moved. She changed her name. But then 5 years later, she died. Thank goodness. At the age of 61, I think she had lung cancer. So she died. So,
Because she could have just moved someplace else, changed her name, and done the
Started over.
same thing again.
yeah.
Because back then...
Crazy
like
that her daughter got she was out in 2 years for second-degree murder.
It's crazy.
And it
So, wait a minute,
just,
so she could still be in Indianapolis.
they don't, Paula
She lives
is
next
her,
door.
her whereabouts, because I looked up.
Come
like,
on in, Paul.
She's babysitting my kids right now. What?
They think Paula's still alive. Her whereabouts are unknown. The boys, they changed their names. They're, just a very weird, obviously Gertrude's dead, but the rest of the family could still, be living. I couldn't really find any information out, but Sylvia's story just remains tragic. So I was kind of looking up afterwards. Lester died in 2013. Betty, his wife, died much earlier than that. I mean, she died in 1999, I think. And they said both of them were never the same. They divorced. I think Betty ended up getting remarried, whatever. And then the rest of the kids, it was just tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. One of the sons was murdered. Jenny ended up moving to Beech Grove. She got married, but she ended up dying of a heart attack at the age of 54, and they blamed it. She died of a broken heart. Just the guilt that she never did anything. One of the sisters is still alive. And their total side note, I was kind of looking up, her name is Diane, the one that had called CPS. Her and her husband went missing in the woods, for 2 weeks. And her husband ended up dying of starvation, but she ended up living. I mean, I'm telling you.
Okay, come on.
Tragedy followed that entire family. And it brought me to the realization of the way, just the whole dynamic of that family. It's almost like they never had a fighting chance.
Yeah.
It was so, so sad.
Yeah.
So they still honor her in the year. I think that the 50-year anniversary was that's kind of, I found this article on Indy Star and it was recent. So they were kind of revisiting the things. The house has been torn down because it was a spectator, you want to go, ooh, where did these things happen?
Like the ghost tours we went on in South Carolina.
Except these weren't ghosts. These were
Correct. Live people.
But awful story. And there are several podcasts if you want to learn more about it, or just from a different, there is, you could dive into, I could have talked about this for 2 hours, just the details. But there was also a movie, which I didn't know. And I'm very not excited in it, but I'm, yes. It was in 2007. It's called An American Crime. And it stars Elliot Page, who was formerly known as Ellen Page, but she was in Juno. Stars in that movie. And so, as Sylvia.
Okay.
So I'm going to, I want to watch that and just kind of just see from the take, just kind of see it as at a different, angle.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I kept thinking while you were talking, here's my feedback you didn't ask for.
No, that's what.
Is that every neighborhood I've lived in has a weird neighbor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And weird in the sense that not like I've seen anything bad, but it's just weird comings and goings.
Vibes,
or
Well, was that neighborhood?
Covering,
I'm guessing that neighborhood was a poor neighborhood.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and the house next door to it, they did mention this in one of the articles, was vacant.
Yeah.
So, okay, but there really wasn't a lot of prying eyes.
But even in neighborhoods, none of us live in a poor neighborhood right now. But don't you, there's always those houses that you tell your kids to run a little faster when you run past it or whatever. But I never think, we should go look in there. I should go up to their door. I should call the police. There could be a kid trapped in the basement.
I know.
Yeah.
And this is 50, 60 years later.
There was
you know
always
what I mean?
the house that my parents said, trick-or-treating. Well, just make sure you don't stop at so-and-so's house. And
he was probably a perv and everybody knew it.
everybody was afraid of them anyway because we thought the house was
there
haunted.
There were houses when our kids were little that we were like, nope, you're not spending the night there. I mean,
for sure.
You're not, you just kind of.
But we didn't do anything. So I was sitting here fully passing guilt, which is, I mean, that is an extreme case, but I'm like, how could they let that happen? Or how could they?
No, I totally get it.
And then like, what have I passively let happen by not say, like when I get it, I mean, you can't call the police every time you get a bad vibe on people. I would be calling police every day.
Well, it goes to show too, the adult.
I need to call them right now.
The adult in the situation, she had all the power.
Yeah.
She was deranged to involve her children and neighborhood children. I mean, deranged.
It was entertainment. I mean, like that doesn't even.
And just,
gross.
God love her. I mean, she died within 4 months of stepping foot in that house.
Oh my God.
A torturous, awful death that basically her sister witnessed. I don't know how.
Well, I'm just happy that they solved it, because a lot of those kind of things, especially back when there wasn't a lot of DNA being collected or didn't have the technology to know what to do with it, people got away with stuff that seemed pretty obvious.
Yes.
So I'm happy at least that someone was
she
accountable.
tried to plead insanity, and I'm guessing she was a sociopath.
Well, you got to be crazy to do that kind of stuff.
Crazy, but she was
not the kind that you don't get
trial.
out.
She was able to be on trial.
You knew what you did was wrong.
Go be
to
crazy
jail.
in prison. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was. I was reading a little bit about some of one podcast, and it was a girl that did the podcast. But when she was little, her dad was a cop that investigated the case, and so she had a friend come over one night and spend the night. And let's go in my mom and dad's room and see if we can find anything. And under the bed, her dad had all the information about the case and like copies of pictures, and it piqued her interest. And that gave her, as an adult, I'm going to do a story about this because I have some firsthand knowledge of what her dad would never talk about it. Right. It scarred like as far as you just never
horrible things
to, So there's just so much about the case, and it's so well documented now that it's interesting to read about it. And that's why, I mean, I don't like the fact that people get murdered. I don't like the fact that but you feel like it's made me a much more aware person.
That's what I was going to say. I think one of the main reasons people watch the shows and listen to the podcast is that it gives you a sense of control over yourself. Well, I start walking with my keys in my hand because I saw someone that punched somebody's eye out. I don't know. Or like how to approach a car and they got kidnapped this way. Well, here's a better way to do it. And then all of a sudden you're approaching your car at an angle instead of straight up. And, you pick up these things. I don't know that's your intent when you're watching it, but that's what you're doing. And so you're gaining something from it.
You really are.
There's a thrill, not in a gross way, I think, but we like to be scared. Like scary movies, people like to be scared, but you're safe. You're in your house.
Yep. Yeah, I don't like to be scared.
Got some chips, whatever. You don't like to be scared ever?
No.
Oh, I don't like really scary movies. I like psychological thrillers.
And literally, it would, if they watch something scary that really spooked them, it really affects them.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely.
My kids don't love.
I love.
Yeah.
I like scary movies. I
don't like gory. I think I like to be psychological thrillers. I really like.
I can sit through those. I think I still sleep with a nightlight because I saw Poltergeist when I was too little. I wasn't prepared for it.
I still washing my face at night.
You afraid to look in the mirror?
Afraid to look in the mirror. Like I'm like rinsing with one eye and then a washcloth.
That always sticks
my
out
eyes
to
have
me.
never been clean because I've never been able to watch.
No, Poltergeist. One of the scenes that sticks out to me is when the maggots were eating at the steak.
Yeah.
In Poltergeist. That was one of the first scary movies I watched, and I'm telling you, it changed how I felt.
Well, I'm with you.
And I still
you watch it now too, and
but
you're
I mean,
like,
I think
really?
there's a beginning and then usually a clean ending. Usually it's solved if you're watching it or listening to it on TV or a podcast, and unless it's the unsolved ones. But so there's a completion in an hour. You like that, you like to see the process.
Yes.
So there's a lot of fulfilling things in watching it that way.
I also think when I watch, and this is probably more of a Dateline thing than anything, is that people that you think you know really well, it's always, and then that scares me. I'm like, oh, how many people do I know really well that are secretly trying to murder me?
90% of the world are freaks. That is my takeaway.
You could really go down a rabbit hole.
One, two. Okay.
There's a documentary called In Plain Sight.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ooh, you could go down a rabbit hole of, and don't F with cats. Did you ever watch that one?
I remember.
On Netflix.
Yep.
Was the cat the killer?
No, but
I don't trust
it
cats.
shows a side of society, the underground dark web side, that really.
I don't even understand what the dark web is.
I don't either, and I don't ever want to look at it. But you think that stuff is fake? It is absolutely not. There's a whole underground.
Okay, that gave me the chills. No,
it's crazy. It's amazing I sleep at night. No wonder I'm anxious all the time.
You know too much.
I mean, but
the world we live in is not the entire world. And that's, I think a lot of people need to realize that, because there's that saying about if everyone threw their problems in a pile, you would quickly grab your own back. It's just completely different, the stuff other people deal with day to day, or
I'm just not cut out for this crime thing. I'm just not.
Well, that's why I'm going to kill you. No, I'm not. If she dies, it wasn't me. I feel like that needs to be cut out.
Well, that's going to be an easy one to solve,
I think
people.
What you would like, and not hearing about the blood and gore and all that stuff. It keeps you like with this Payne Lindsay, with his investigative,
Right.
with the Native American. It's so fascinating that someone, no reason to do it, no reason, he doesn't have a family member or whatever, but that his plight is to, hey, these voices need to be heard. These women voices need to be heard. I'm going to figure out who is doing this, and I'm going to shed light on it. And the day and age that we live in, it does.
Yeah, it does.
Almost podcasters are some of the main reasons that police are put up against the fire to start solving these cases.
Right.
So,
and there's just so many. There's so many. And I think 24-hour news, that's another big one that influenced all of this.
Nancy Grace.
Jean-Benet, can I bring it up?
I mean,
I
seriously.
was so
look at
enthralled
that.
with the whole Jean-Benet thing.
Everyone still is.
Still is not solved. How?
They know.
I feel like somebody's paid off. I don't know who that
Somebody
someone
knows.
is. I'm not pointing any fingers. I don't know who did it. I don't know. Who do you think? Who do you think? Because I have thoughts.
This is not my original thought. It's my daughter's, but we did watch because she's really into conspiracy theories. But she's convinced it was the brother.
There's so much of me that points to being the brother, but he was so young to have done the things that were done to her.
What makes me sad is that he was so young that I can't imagine coming upon a scene that, assuming it's him, and I don't know if it was him, I don't even know if I think it's him, but that, thinking one of your kids killed another one and that one's already gone. So now how do I not ruin this one's life?
How do I protect this one? Yeah.
And making that split decision and writing the note, all of it, whatever happened. It's too
so
much
complicated.
that I don't understand how someone on the inside track who has seen all of the evidence doesn't make a deathbed confession and say, this is who it was. We didn't do it, but it's been so long.
I know, but I'm telling you, I think that with DNA and
but don't they have some?
They do,
and the interest in the case, like you said.
Well, that's how her brother got cleared, right? Because there was DNA.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah.
So I feel bad saying it was him. I apologize.
And he put himself out there.
Well, you didn't say it. I did. But
okay.
On Dr.
I'm sorry, he didn't.
But and he was
he
almost.
Might have.
I don't. Yeah, there was a lot, but it'll be solved.
I hope he doesn't listen.
I hope it is solved.
Yeah.
Oh, I want it to be solved.
I never liked the mom. I don't care. I'm not saying she's guilty. I never liked her. We didn't hang out, but I'm just saying.
Any pageant mom, I'm a little suspect.
Exactly.
I would have been a pageant mom had I had all the opportunities.
I'm a little suspect of you. So
okay. I'm just saying I'm not hating them all because it's pretty fun. Toddlers and Tiaras.
Stop.
I love that show. Okay, different podcast. Go on.
No, that's all I have. I think it would be fun to do this down the road again. I was leery to do any famous, like the Delphi murders here in Indiana or Lauren Spear here in Bloomington. You don't know
who's connected to it personally.
I don't want to touch things that I don't have the background to touch, you know, that kind of stuff. But maybe next time we'll discuss,
but when COVID restrictions lift, do you want to go with me and sit around in the diner?
I would absolutely.
I was thinking
I would like to go.
I honestly thought, would it kill me to go a couple hours a week and just walk around and listen as nobody's paying any attention to me because But
you're an outsider. They know.
Do they know everybody? Come on. Put on some overalls.
Somebody knows something.
Put on your overalls, kids, and they'll never know.
Somebody knows something.
They do. Okay. Well, Kim, thank you for shedding a light that now I'm going to be afraid to sleep at night because I think I might be surrounded by.
Or educate yourself and overcome the fear because it's making you more self-aware.
That's right. I'm now. Everyone's a suspect now. So
well, everyone's a suspect. Everyone's a weirdo.
True.
it's all
true. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Up for Grabs. Please come back and join us again when I don't know if we'll solve an unsolved.
You never know.
You don't even know.
We're going to solve a crime before our next podcast. That is our sign.
So we really need to get going.
We are.